Yo, what's up, guys? This is Why Not Be Reckless, aka Why Not Be Cast Down, one of the HCS commentators, and we have another HCS weekly report where today and for the rest of the week leading up until DreamHack Dallas, we're going to be breaking down all 16 teams that were invited to the HCS Global Invitational. We've already done Sentinels, Rebellion, the Avengers, Native White, G1 Complexity, and now we're doing Native Red and Optic Gaming today, starting with Native Red, made up of Druck, Manny, Soul Snipe, and Talik, and coached by Mr. Jam I Am. Native Red, largely known as one of the fastest teams in the league, one of the most objective, efficient teams in the league, and the ultimate X factors. When we talked about Native Red, we talked about a team that can almost beat anybody in the league, can also be upset by almost anyone. Talik, one of sneakily like a top 5 Slayer in the league. Like sneakily, nobody talks about how good Talik is at slaying. He kind of flies under the radar. Like the pros, no, but most of the community have no idea how good of a Slayer Talik is. He puts shots, he stays alive. It's nothing flashy, but it is effective and it simply works. Talik, one of the best Slayers that we have in our league, sneakily. Soul Snipe was largely known as an objective mastermind going back to Halo 5. Now going into Halo Infinite, he didn't really have that the movement that he would like. I mean, he still has great movement, but without the thrust line and certain things not working the same back in Halo 5, I feel like Soul Snipe has had to evolve his game a little bit, still thinking outside the box and still being an objective mastermind that he is, but also having to learn how to value his life and how to approach scenarios a little bit differently. And I think since he's done that, I feel like Soul Snipe has really come into his own here on Halo Infinite, and it's helped made Native Red even a stronger team. And Mr. Soul Snipe often will call Manny the X Factor. You know, if Native Red are the ultimate X Factor team, Manny's the ultimate X Factor player on that team. He's not the most consistent. He really isn't. But when Manny's popping off, he's popping off. It's crazy. Like, I swear, if you told me Manny went 5-21 against Optic Gaming, I'm not surprised. If you told me Manny went 21-5 against Optic Gaming, I would not be surprised. The man, when he's heating up, he is dangerous. And then you have Druck, who wasn't able to make it to Charlotte. And I can only imagine that Druck and Native Red are out for revenge. They're out to show people that they are still those guys. If I'm Druck, I can't wait to get back on land and to prove to everybody that they still are a top team in the league. Watch out for Native Red. I feel like they have so much to prove. Let's see how they've looked in the past, and let's talk about them a little bit. But I'm sorry, before we get to that, I do want to talk about their pool, which is Pool D. Sneakily one of the pools of death. You know, I talked about the fact that the way Complexity has been looking online, if they could even bring, you know, a fraction of that to land, Complexity do have the ability to beat Native Red and everybody else in the pool. Native Red still a top seed. And I would say when it comes to on land, you probably would have Native Red as the favorites going up against Complexity. Especially with like as much as I put on being experienced on land and experiencing winning on land, Native Red have tasted. You know, they've had a morsel. They've had the appetizer of getting 3rd place at Worlds. And once you get a taste of success on land, you keep going back for more. You know, you keep going back for seconds, for thirds. You know, if it's all you can eat buffet, you just keep going. You on your 8th plate, because once you had the crowd on your side, like they did in Kansas City, which was amazing, by the way. You had an entire crowd yelling KCP, which I can only imagine was phenomenal. When you get 3rd place at Worlds and you have that crowd back on your side, they're screaming, they're chanting your name. Once you get a taste of that, you want more. I think Native Red definitely want more after not being able to compete with their full roster at Charlotte. Speaking of which, as we kind of talked about, outside of the top 16, you see Native Red nowhere to be found. They had a diagram of, by the way, phenomenal player, one of the triplets, filling in for Native Red, and they had to compete in the open bracket. Going through the open bracket, they were literally one round away from making it out. Sadly, they weren't able to do so. I believe actually Native White, who beat them out in the final rounds, and Native White ended up making it through. Native Red not able to make. I believe, I could be wrong about that. If I am, I apologize. Let me know in the comments down below. But I believe it was Native Red that were one round away from making it to championship bracket and making it to the top 16, but sadly missed out on just that. Again, not having Druk win their starting lineup. Since then, as I kind of talked about now, going into Dallas, wanting to get their revenge, wanting to prove that they were a top team. I feel like that was the same case going into the first 4K on April 22nd and 23rd. Native Red, again, biggest tournament since LAN, and now with their starting lineup, looks like Native Red wanted to prove that they still are those guys. They still have the ability to win at a high level, and they still are a top team in the league. And fourth place, to me, that proves that. But I want to see who they beat and who they lost to. G1 coming out with the 3-0 for Native Red. I talked about this a little bit yesterday, but Native Red, normally almost always take G1 to a Game 5, and it's always a great series. And I would say more recently, Native Red have kind of gotten the best of G1 when they have matched up against each other. We'll see that throughout the rest of the tournaments that we go over, but it was G1 that 3-0 Native Red before getting 3-1 by FaZe. Native Red getting knocked out in round number 1 and forced to go on a miraculous run to get that 4th place finish, by the way. 3-1 on Shopify Rebellion, 3-2 on Sentinels, 3-1 on Optic Gaming before running into G1 once again, where G1 6-0'd them. Between winners bracket round 1 and the losers bracket semifinals to make top 3, G1, their first time running with Suppressed, getting the best of Native Red, knocking them down into that 4th place spot. But I will say, although I would like to see Native Red take 1 and most of the time take 2 games on G1 and make it a hell of a series, G1 obviously going through their honeymoon phase, Native Red getting 4th place, I'm not mad at that, especially after 3-1 Optic Gaming, arguably the number 1 team in the world. Going into May 4th, the 2K Open Series right after that 4K. Native Red, once again, 4th place. Not bad. Considering how tight it is outside of the top 3. When I legitimately ask you about teams that are fighting for a top 4 spot, you're gonna mention the gamers first. You're gonna mention Avengers. You're gonna mention Sentinels, Rebellion. You're gonna mention Native White and other teams. There's so many teams that are gunning for that 4th place spot. So anything outside the top 3 is competitive. And the fact that Native Red were able to get 4th place in two back-to-back tournaments, I think it's pretty good. I think that's pretty good. But let's see what the matchups really were like. Although Native Red were able to 3-1 Optic Gaming to knock them out of the tournament during the first 4K after Charlotte, Optic Gaming 3-0 sweep Native Red, knocking them into the elimination bracket in round number 2. Native Red then go on to 3-2 G1, the very team that 6-0'd them the week before. Very team that 6-0'd them, 3-2 in favor of Native Red over G1. So Native Red beat Optic Gaming, then lost Optic. They lost to G1 dominantly, by the way, then go out and beat G1, just proving that history doesn't always repeat itself. However, when running into FaZe, once again, FaZe getting the best of Native Red and coming out with the 3-1 in favor of FaZe, knocking Native Red out in 4th place. And like I said before, if it, I said the same thing about, G1 getting top 6. If your name isn't Space Station, FaZe, or Optic, you should not be crushed. You should not be mentally defeated after getting top 4, in my opinion. I don't know. I think top 4 is a damn good placing for almost anybody in the league that isn't named Space Station, FaZe, or Optic. Those are the only 3 teams that I can imagine getting 4th place and being disappointed within themselves. Once again, Native Red getting 4th place again, so we're seeing a level of consistency. We're seeing that sweet spot, like the sweet, like Cool Whip. Native Red, 4th place again in the final 4K. This was the FaZe 4K Dallas qualifier. But their road was a little bit different. Native Red. First of all, I don't know what mantra ate. I don't know what mantra drank. I don't know what Ace was feeding his teammates this tournament, but mantra were looking much different. A team that, by the way, is not even qualified for Dallas Land, but damn sure belongs here. I wish they could have extended it to 2 more teams and bring on Mantra and Status Quo, maybe even Cloud9 as well. Because, oh my gosh, Mantra were on one. And came out the number 1 seed out of pools. G1 came number 2 out of pools, leaving Native Red in 3rd place and having to fight immediate elimination bracket. Remember, the way the pool plays work are, if you're 1st place, you go up against the 2nd seed in another pool. If you're 2nd place, go up against number 1 seed in another pool in winner's bracket. But if you're in 3rd place, you immediately start in the elimination bracket. And that's not where anybody wants to be, especially Native Red. But it's where Native Red thrived. Because they stared down the face of adversity and they did the damn thing. 3-1 on Sentinels, 3-1 on Rebellion, 3-1 on the very team that took the number 1 seed within their pools, putting them in a terrible position to begin with, until getting 3-1 themselves by Complexity. By the way, let's not forget Complexity in the same pool as them, going into Pool D, going into Dallas. Leaving Native Red in 4th place, and I will say I've been tough on Native Red in the past because I didn't see a level of consistency that we wanted to see. But seeing the fact that they got 4th place during the first 4K, 4th place during the 2K, 4th place during the last 4K, I mean that is consistently good. Some may argue that that's consistently great out of Native Red. I've been hard on them in the past about being consistent, and so far they've consistently been kicking butt. I'm hard on teams when I have to be, but I feel like I got to give credit where credit's due. Native Red have been stepping it up, and kind of quietly stepping it up. They've been. This is one thing that I noticed, that Native Red and Native White have kind of adopted this philosophy that I'm seeing, is that they're only going up against top teams. And I commend Native White and Native Red for only going up against top teams. I do. I think that's a good strategy. But I will say, I would love to see them mix in a scrim for a team that they're supposed to beat. Just, keep going against top teams like this. Don't shy away from the Space Station gamings that you take 4 games off of. Don't shy away from the Optic gamings that you take 3 wins off of. I'll say this for a little bit, but even going against Space Station, don't shy away from them. I would say mix in a little bit, mix in, maybe a Sentinels or a Rebellion scrim just once in that week, I think it'd be really valuable. In addition to testing your limits. Love the fact that it went up against Quadrant. By the way, great for Quadrant. We're going to be talking about Quadrant real soon here, and what they've been looking like since they've been playing early on land. Because trust me, you guys are going to be surprised at what Quadrant been looking like, but that's for another video. Native Red did lose out by 1 against Quadrant, the #1 team in Europe, and it just shows that, just because you get top 8, just because you top 6, just because you get top 6, just because you get top 4 in North America doesn't mean that there's not other teams that are outside of the U.S., outside of our region, that are not gunning for your spot. And Quadrant have been taking things very seriously, and good for them for going toe-to-toe with Native Red and even beating them out on an extra game going into scrims. Like I said, we'll talk about them on another video. But yeah, that's your HCS Weekly Report going over Native Red, 4th place in all 3 tournaments, and they did so playing against multiple different teams. They did so play, multiple different ways. Some in the winners bracket starting off, one even in the losers bracket starting off. And one thing we can say is that Native Red have sneakily been consistent and have been leveling up, and I hope that translates when going into DreamHack Dallas. Yeah, I'll catch you guys later. Next up, Optic Gaming.